Good afternoon, friends, families, distinguished faculty, and fellow graduates. I am deeply honored to speak here today. I prepared remarks for this occasion about 6 weeks ago, centered around the idea of place and sprinkled with some bad jokes. After hearing the news yesterday, I knew that I would be remiss to not address the tragedy in Texas to a tent full of educators. Many of us have read countless articles, engaged in spirited discussions with peers, and listened to many a lecture on how to make school a safe place for learning. While I'm not a seasoned or gifted enough speaker to completely adjust what I'll say to you today, I am grateful for the human capacity to be able to feel more than one emotion at once. Today, I feel a deep sadness and grief for the victims and their families of this horrific tragedy, an anger and indignation that our elected officials have still failed to act to prevent acts of violence such as these. Gratitude that in this moment in time, I can find comfort with so many people who I love and admire. And lastly, a fire and motivation to keep on pushing with the work we've started here at the Harvard Graduate School of Education. And I'll take a moment to remind you all, and perhaps myself as well, that experiencing joy doesn't mean that we've forgotten about the context in which we are living, but rather that these moments are the fuel that keep us fighting the good fight another day. With all that in mind, I'd like to start with some gratitude. Thank you to my faculty advisor, Dr. Mary Grassa O'Neill, for your guidance. And to all of my professors who have uniquely and profoundly impacted my leadership forever. To my classmates and friends, especially SLP folks, for your companionship through this roller coaster of a journey. Thank you. To my parents, Amy and Frank Frusciante, for your unconditional love. To my husband and my partner, Taylor Gilbert, for your unwavering support and steadiness. And to our two children, Edith and Andy, for always understanding when mommy needed to go to class. 20 years ago, when I graduated from high school, I got a core group of my friends each a copy of Oh, the Places You'll Go by Dr. Seuss. You're off to great places. Today is your day. Your mountain is waiting, so get on your way. Classic. Since then, I've learned a few things. One, Dr. Seuss drew some pretty racist propaganda cartoons during World War II. Sorry, old friends. And two, place is a deeply subjective and highly fluid term. 2 years ago, I got an email inviting me to learn to change the world. It was an email that changed my life. I'm guessing I'm not the only one here for whom this is true. That email, that invitation, changed my perception of myself and my own ability forever. Heck, it changed the world's perception of me forever. 18 years before, I dreamed of the places I'd go, the hallowed halls of the Ivy League, of Harvard. Certainly never seemed within reach. But that day I learned I was going to Harvard. But in 2020, going to Harvard meant something very different. And as it turned out, those hallowed halls would have to wait. Tomorrow, all of us graduate from Harvard. Yeah. Yesterday, I had to ask for directions to the bathroom. You see, as a virtual part-time student, I've never been to this place. 4 days ago was my first time ever stepping foot onto this campus. Oh, the places you'll finally go. Place. Together, over the last 2 years, we've redefined the meaning of the word. Still, let me tell you about some of the literal places I would go while attending Harvard. I would go to my guest room, where I learned from some of the most brilliant minds in education today. It was there where I confessed to a Zoom room full of strangers that I once waited in line for a selfie with Dr. Junlei Lee at an AC conference. The only consolation for having to follow Junlei today is that you all have more context for that statement. In that same room, weeks later, Junlei gave me feedback on the theory of change I wrote as a final for the class that he co-teaches with Dr. Stephanie Jones, a document I used to set up Early Partners, the school that I now run. It was in that same guest room where I confronted my own racial identity in Dr. Irvin Scott's Race, Equity, and Leadership class. I cried with friends, all sitting in different rooms, in some cases thousands of miles away, when we learned that Breonna Taylor's killer would not be charged. We challenged each other to think more deeply about how our identities impacted our leadership and how we could build schools where equity isn't just a poster on the wall and an hour-long workshop, but the foundation upon which a school is built. You see, those brilliant minds I mentioned weren't just on the faculty. It was in that same guest room where I would be inspired and challenged by my classmates, many of whom were also leading schools, starting nonprofits, or teaching day after day in masks or on Zoom. It was in that place where I came to realize we weren't just learning to change the world, we were actively doing it. Oh, the places we'll go. But fast forward to this school year, when I would go to Florida. It wasn't for a trip to the beach. I started the first week of classes this year in Florida after Hurricane Ida shut down my city and my startup school. During evacuation, I would also go to my car with my husband, our 2 young children, and our 10-month-old bloodhound puppy. On I-10, somewhere between New Orleans and Orlando, is where I completed the first 2 weeks' worth of readings for Dr. Meredith Rowe's class, a class that would later reshape my approach to pedagogy and professional development for Early Partners. Once returning home, I would finally go to my closet, my makeshift home office after the 4th class quarantine for one of my kids. It was there where I got feedback on a pitch deck from the Comm Lab, learned that a balance sheet should always be balanced from Jim Honan, and had a Zoom conversation with former Secretary of Education, John King. This collection of places is not your conventional Harvard experience. Yet this place is where we all found our people. Those who dedicate their lives to making every place radically better for the future. So today, as I look at all of you for the first time in person, I can't help but think, many of you are much taller than what I was expecting. I feel very small. But in all seriousness, in these times of incredible uncertainty, I am so grateful to know that all of you will be off in your new places, fighting that good fight and helping others learn to change the world.